The following video involves the efforts of several Chinese citizens from 3 of China's cities, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Huizhou. These individuals have graciously extended themselves to answer detailed questions regarding various topics not typically discussed at length. We would like to offer our sincere gratitude for their time and candid answers, which came at great inconvenience due to time differential. Their assistance has provided a better understanding of Chinese government and politics. We would especially like to thank Hui He, whose assistance in translation abridged the Chinese-English language barrier. The Census Bureau predicts that China's population will peak in 2026, just 14 years from now. Its labor force will shrink, and its over 65 population will more than double over the next 20 years. China will age very rapidly. Only Japan has aged faster. However, Japan had the great advantage of growing rich before it grew old. By 2030, China will have a slightly higher proportion of the population that is elderly than Western Europe does today. It should be noted that Western Europe has a higher median age than Florida. China notoriously has another demographic challenge. The normal sex ratio at birth is about 103 to 105 boys for every 100 girls. In China, as a result of the one-child policy and gender-selective abortion, the ratio has grown to 120 boys for every 100 girls. From 2000 to 2030, the percentage of men in their late 30s who have never been married is projected to quintuple. The big question is, when you have a growing population of unmarried men running around, what effect will it have on civil society, especially given that China shares borders with over a dozen countries? Let's take a moment and speak with a Chinese citizen. The Chinese government recently relaxed its one-family, one-child policy. Because China's population is expected to peak in the year 2030 and then decline, do you think that the government will further relax on its policy? If so, how?
The main problem with the population in China is the gap between each generation. According to the recent news reports, only 2% of people apply to have a second child. So I think the government will further relax the policy. The government will further relax its one family, one child policy. The way should be step by step. Like what it's doing right now, if both spouses are from one child family, then the family can have 2 children. The next step should be only require one spouse is resulted from one child policy. Also, it will be in some areas than in others. Eventually, it would be in the whole country. Actually, China is always adjusting its policy. My understanding is that people who live in remote villages always can have second child if their first one is a girl. Of course, it could be in some area and a certain period of time. Also, most minority ethnic groups are not affected by this policy. They can have 2, 3, even 4 kids in one family. Furthermore, considering if those families lost their only child and caring for the elderly detachers, all this made the government have to relax the policy. But it will take time and only step by step from one group to another.
Technically a centrally planned system, China is now market-oriented. The Chinese government, however, has renewed its support for state-owned businesses in sectors deemed critical to economic security. For many years, the RMB traded at a fixed rate. In 2005, the RMB was allowed to gradually appreciate, but this was put on hold during the financial crisis of 2008. In 2010, it was allowed to start appreciating again. China's greatest natural resource is coal and iron ore. It also has a variety of metals such as tin, tungsten, aluminum, and rare earth elements among others. China also has the world's largest potential for hydroelectric power. South China Sea oil-proven reserves are estimated at 7.5 billion barrels. The most optimistic estimate could be 213 billion barrels. This is potential, not proven. Mainland China has approximately 32 billion barrels, but could also have significantly higher shale oil reserves. The difference between the United States and China's oil reserves is that China's shale has higher clay content, which makes it more difficult to extract. In 2013, the estimate for China's GNP was 13.4 trillion. Debt-to-income ratio for China is 55% of GDP. Production price index reflects trend and change of factory prices. As of October 2014, it was negative 2.20. China's exports include machinery, textiles, clothing, and consumer goods. Major export is China's major export, with a value of 561 billion, approximately 24% of all exports. China faces economic challenges on several fronts, including the uncertain legal system, environmental degradation, corruption, and growing income disparity. China's legal system and government place little emphasis on corporate or government liability, meaning that there is very little an individual can do should they be injured from a product or happen to fall into an uncovered construction hole in the sidewalk. You may recall the baby formula scare that swept China about 5 years ago. While there was much media coverage both here and in China, very little was actually done to remedy the problem or compensate victims in a way that would cause corporations to revise production practices. The baby formula issue has had unexpected repercussions. Since the scare, Hong Kongese and Macanese have taken advantage of this and have been personally exporting baby formula purchased there and reselling it on the mainland for a substantial profit. This has led to severe shortages of baby formula in both Hong Kong and Macau and have caused officials to impose a 500,000 Hong Kong dollar fine on anyone transporting more than 1 kilo of baby formula into mainland China. China has a severe pollution issue. Nowhere is that more apparent than the air quality. Everything that you've heard about the air pollution is true, but in addition to this is the land and water pollution. Corruption in China is not readily apparent to tourists because tourism is not the central focus of China's economy. It is, however, apparent to those who live and work there and occurs more often at a higher level than the consumer. For example, in Beijing, the young emperors, which are the children of the political elite, control various aspects of the economy. If, for instance, one decides to visit the Great Wall via tourist bus, he will be asked to pay an additional fee once the bus is underway to ensure that he has a seat for the return trip to Beijing. Many people from the countryside come into the city to earn income because the money earned back on the farm is not enough to sustain them. Not only do these people lack the skills needed in the city to make a decent living, but they are also burdened by the non-city dialects that are evident whenever they speak. As a result, they are shunned into, at best, lower middle-class factory jobs or unskilled labor for one of the many construction sites around the city. Many thousands also start small side businesses, such as illegal street vendors, and are subject to shakedowns by local police, who are also underpaid. It should be noted that the average city wage for an entry-level office position is approximately 2,500 RMB, or $600 a month. Let's take a moment and speak with a Chinese citizen. China is now the second largest economy in the world, and its economy continues to grow, especially in the large cities. What steps is the government taking to make sure those who live in the countryside are also able to enjoy new economic opportunity?
The current central government programs are called Helping the Poor and One-to-One Supporting, in which the large city and poor cities become sister cities, just like the wealthy help their poor relatives. Of course, it is the result of pressure from the central government, and the biggest city has to comply. I'm not sure whether there are some benefit from doing so, but they do whatever they are told. Plus, the funding given to the poor city does not need to be accounted for by the local government. No harm, no gain. The development in West area and North and Northeast are all resulted from these. Slogans are slogans. It is hard to say whether there is any result from it. On the other hand, some poor local counties would rather prefer remain the same status because they can keep getting funding from the central government. So it's really hard for the government to help poor areas.
In 1916, Yu Wan Shikai died, and Sun Yat-sen returned to China to form the Nationalist Party, also known as the Kuomintang. When Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai formed the Communist Party in 1921, they joined the Nationalists to fight the warlords in northern China. Following the death of Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek led the Nationalists, and with the help of the Communists, defeated the warlords in northern China. In 1937, the war with the Japanese started, and Japan occupied Nanjing and killed at least 200,000 Chinese, while raping and torturing many more. After the defeat of Japan, Mao Zedong led the Communists to victory in 1949 and established China as a communist state, complete with a written constitution that, among other things, guaranteed the right for people to assemble, freedom of the press, freedom to demonstrate, freedom of religious belief, freedom from unlawful search and detention, freedom of private correspondence, and many more constitutional rights that are very similar to our own. The devil, however, is in the details, as the legislature, also known as the National People's Congress, has the power to interpret statutes. In 1958, the Great Leap Forward began, and as a result of the national drive to increase steel production, many millions of people starved to death. The Great Leap Forward was followed by the Cultural Revolution, during which the Red Guard organized struggle sessions for the purposes of weeding out those who lacked the proper level of revolutionary zeal. The Red Guard also went around China destroying religious, cultural, and historical artifacts. As a result, many important cultural and historical artifacts are now gone forever. Upon the death of Mao Zedong in 1976, the Cultural Revolution ended, and Deng Xiaoping took over in 1980. Deng opened up China's economy, starting with the creation of a special economic zone in Shenzhen, a sleepy little fishing village across from Hong Kong. This ushered in a new wave of economic prosperity that raised 680 million people from severe poverty. On January 1st, 1997 and 1999 respectively, Hong Kong and Macau were peacefully transferred back to Chinese authority. Chinese military units peacefully moved in, while Hong Kong and Macau's system of government remained firmly in place under the One State, Two Systems Agreement. Since then, China has joined the World Trade Organization and hosted the Summer Olympics in 2008. This event was much more than just another Summer Olympics, as it changed how Chinese viewed themselves as compared to the rest of the world, and demonstrated that a new serious player has arrived on the international scene. Let's take a moment and speak with a Chinese citizen. Chairman Mao is the most important figure in modern Chinese politics. Whom would you consider to be the second most important, and why?
First of all, whether Chairman Mao is the most important figure is still arguable. I think it only represents what you think. Not all Chinese think the same way. As important as Mao, Chiang Kai-shek was very important also. Just like the relationship between Zhuge Liang and Sima Yan. If there's no villain, then there's no hero. If there's no Chiang Kai-shek to unite China and get support from the United States, then there was no story in the following. Chiang has done a lot before Mao took over.
The legal power of the Communist Party is guaranteed by China's constitution, which also describes China's unicameral legislature, the National People's Congress, or NPC, as the highest organ of state power. The NPC's role includes supervising the work of other political bodies. Most positions of power in the state and military structure are held by members of the Communist Party of China. The Communist Party of China is controlled by the Politburo Standing Committee of the Communist Party of China, which is made up of a group of 4 to 9 people, typically older men, who all make decisions of national importance. The role of the military is to enforce these decisions. As such, the support of the military is important to maintaining party rule. The political bodies of China include its legislative branch, which is the National People's Congress, its executive branch, the State Council, its judicial branch, which is the Supreme People's Court, and the military branch, which is the People's Liberation Army, or PLA. The National People's Congress is the highest state body and the only legislative house in the People's Republic of China. Although membership of the NPC is still largely determined by the Communist Party of China, since the early 1990s, it has moved away from its previous role as a symbolic but powerless rubber-stamped legislature and has become a forum for mediating policy differences between different parts of the party and the government. For the NPC to formally defeat a proposal put before them is rare, but the NPC has become a forum in which legislation is debated before being put to a vote. Members of the State Council include the Premier, a variable number of Vice Premiers, 5 State Councilors, and 29 ministers and heads of State Council commissions. Power is concentrated in the paramount leader, who heads the 3 most important political and state offices: General Secretary of the Communist Party and of the Central Committee, Chairman of the Central Military Commission, and President of the People's Republic of China. The President and Vice President are elected by the National People's Congress for 5-year terms. The President is a ceremonial office and serves as the nominal head of state. This election falls into the category of single-candidate elections, as the candidate is recommended by the Presidium of the National People's Congress. The State Council is the chief authority of the People's Republic of China. It is appointed by the National People's Congress and chaired by the Premier, and includes the heads of each governmental department and agency. There are approximately 50 members in the Council, who serve to directly oversee the various subordinate people's governments in the provinces, and in practice maintain the interlocking membership with the top levels of the Communist Party of China. The state constitution refers to the Supreme People's Court as the highest judicial organ. It is the highest court in the judicial system of the People's Republic of China. Hong Kong and Macau, as special administrative regions, have their own separate judicial systems which are based on British common law traditions and Portuguese civil law traditions, respectively. As such, they are out of the jurisdiction of the Supreme People's Court. The judges of the Supreme People's Court are appointed by the National People's Congress. Until recently, the National People's Congress's primary role was to ratify decisions made by the Central Committee. Recently, the National People's Congress has been taking a more active role in policymaking. Do you see this trend continuing? If so, how?
I don't think there will be another party that can replace or have influence. It's really hard to say that whether it's a good thing or bad thing to have more than 2 parties. Like I heard of Thailand and Philippines, they have more than 2 parties. But each time when they whenever they have election or something decision making, two parties always fight with each other, and later on they can revoke the election results.
Okay.
To me, this is totally waste of time and resource.
The four biggest players in the Chinese government are the head of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping in the center, the premier of the PRC, Li Keqiang to the left of Xi, the chairman of the NPC Standing Committee, Zhang Dezhong on the right of Xi, and the chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, Yu Zhengsheng to the right of Zhang. Xi Jinping was born on June 15, 1953, and is informally referred to as China's paramount leader. This is due to his being the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, the President of the People's Republic of China, and the Chairman of the Central Military Commission. Starting his political career as the governor of Fujian, Xi rose to become leader quickly, moving to governor of Shuizhong and Shanghai respectively as he gained political experience. Within 10 years, he became the Vice President of the People's Republic of China, and 5 years later rose to the rank of the head. Much of his career has stemmed from his ideas of the Chinese dream, viewed as a national rejuvenation, improvements of people's livelihoods, prosperity, construction of a better society, and military strengthening. Xi's view of the Chinese dream has spread through his country, and he has stated that he wants Chinese youth to dare to dream, work assiduously to fulfill the dreams and contribute to the revitalization of the nation. Li Keqiang started his political career through the Communist Youth League and closely followed Xi Jinping's rise to power through becoming a governor of certain regions of China, namely Hunan. Li has focused on foreign policy and national security, recently making visits to India to dissolve border disputes and stimulate economic relations. He feels that a good relationship with India is increasingly vital for China's success and has made similar trips to Europe with these ideas in mind. Zhang Dezhong has been a party secretary on his rise to power and has made huge impacts in regards to China's energy source, telecommunications, and transportation. He shares the same belief as Li in that foreign relations with other countries are important for China, and was given an award from Pakistan's head of state for strengthening the ties between the two nations. He has been known to have a laissez-faire attitude towards private enterprise, wanting them to operate freely but within the bounds of the law. Yu Zhengsheng, like Zhang, was never a governor of any regions of China, but also worked as the Communist Party secretary in the Hubei province. His brother defected to the United States in 1985 and was later assassinated, leading to Xi Zheng's political life being closely monitored, but he still rose to power through many years of service. Do you think that in the next 20 years, a political party other than the Communist Party will have a meaningful influence in China's political life? If so, would this be a good thing or a bad thing for the Chinese people, and why?
Yes, I do see the trend continuing. People will have a louder voice, and the system will be more democratic.
The official national language spoken in China is Hutonghua, a form of Mandarin, and it is used in the country's mainland. Hong Kong and Macau are the only two cities that are not required to adhere to China's language laws. China ensures that its written laws are written in a language that the people, who must follow them, can easily understand. Because of this, tourists and Chinese people are expected to understand and adhere to the laws put into force without any excuses. Due to having a national language, outside of some small language differences, China has very few issues in regards to this. This is a rare occurrence for countries that are known globally to have two or more languages that are widely used. Yet by making Hutonghua the national language, Chinese leaders have avoided this issue. As you can see, the southeastern areas of China mainly speak different dialects, so the laws in these areas would be written in both Mandarin and the language that dominates the area respectively. The State Bureau of Religious Affairs, or the SRBA, controls all religion in regards to China. Through the Constitution, the SRBA officially protects the freedoms of religion, but only in regards to the 4 religions it allows. The 4 religions that are allowed through the SRBA are Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, and Christianity. These religions are closely monitored to make sure that they adhere to the rules set forth by the SRBA and are supportive of the communist leadership. Buddhism is the dominant religion of China and is the only religion that the political officers are allowed to practice. Communist political leaders are meant to be atheists, but the allowing of the country's leaders to practice Buddhism gained strong national support for the communist regime. China is the #1 country in the world with people that consider themselves atheists, by number and by percentage of people. With the communist regime as their leadership, the people of China have strongly moved towards atheism. Due to the fact that atheism is not considered a religion in China, it is allowed without having to go through the SRBA to practice, and is strongly encouraged by the country's leadership. Having the citizens follow atheism helps push the communist ideals of China, and allows the SRBA to monitor the 4 religions which it does allow. Tensions between the old way of communist thinking, the comrade, and the new way, the citizen, have risen due to the necessity for people to support communism in order for it to work. During the Cultural Revolution, Chinese leaders told the people to question their parents and teachers to allow the idea of radicalism to spread and communism to flourish. Chinese leaders did not expect the questioning to continue and eventually go against the communist regime. Students that have studied abroad have caused Chinese citizens to realize the vast differences in the way their government can support them, which has caused many protests and riots, including the famous Tiananmen Square incident. This incident was led by a pro-democratic movement with King Tao as its figurehead. This movement and the reaction by the Chinese government has been the catalyst for movements all the way up to the Hong Kong protests earlier this year. The Bureau of Religious Affairs officially recognizes Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Taoism/Taoism. If an average person wishes to practice a different religion, how could this be accomplished?
Chinese have freedom of religion. At the meantime, we still need to include culture and unite minorities. The Constitution says that Chinese has freedom of religions. In fact, there are all kinds of religions, and there are huge amount of people are practicing religion. The government treats each religion differently. However, the bottom line is, regardless what kind of religion, including the above 4 religions, they still need to be patriotic. If any religion engaged in secession, the government will still limit it and even suppress it.
Recent riots and demonstrations have continued to shift policies towards capitalism and democracy. The current leadership of China has strongly opposed this change and will continue to do so, encouraging Chinese citizens to accept and embrace communism. The movement towards less strict government has been seen worldwide since Tiananmen Square. This call has been continuously rallied for and a focal point in the lives of many Chinese citizens. Though there is resistance against the communist regime, allowing the practice of religions originating from other countries has been seen as a step in the right direction by many, and has gained support along with a great amount of Chinese citizens practicing atheism. With the people of China gaining more liberties than any other communist state has before, the future of China is considered to be good. With the population expected to peak around 2030, China has still managed to keep the inflation down, while spreading the wealth of its major cities throughout the country. Also, with being a superpower, the communist parties of other countries have started gaining influence, while people see the success of the system when it is allowed to be modified for the citizens. As a superpower in the world system that has been able to identify its greatest threats, such as overpopulation, while modifying laws and addressing protests for more freedom, China's government is ensuring a bright future. What do you consider to be the most significant challenge facing China, and why? Also, how do you think China will confront this challenge?
The biggest challenge is the economy. Right now the economy is based on cheap labor, and we need to move to the next level like technology. Another challenge is political. The Communist Party needs to keep the society stable. The biggest challenge for China is not domestic or international politics, but economic development. The Communist Party leadership is based on developing the economy. In a Chinese saying, any domestic problem can be solved by using yuan. Right now there is a debt crisis in the local cities, and mostly the central government keeps funding them to move the projects forward. However, it is hard to say how long it can last. Japan's economy used to be highly developed, but we don't see that in the last 20 years. Based on this principle, there's no country can keep its economic growing for a couple of decades. There is uphill and downhill. When the economy is good, everything is easily taken care of by money. But when the economy is bad, problems arise. Chinese leaders fully understand this principle. Building economy special zones, Shanghai-Hong Kong high-speed rail, and a free trade contract with South Korea are the results of this principle. If it were not for the economic reform after the Cultural Revolution, China would probably end up the same as the Soviet Union. China will find any way to develop its economy to extend its political life.
We hope you've enjoyed the film and that the information we've shared has enhanced your understanding of the People's Republic of China.